Hello, and welcome to Promo Insiders, an ASI media podcast that covers the issues that matter most to the promotional products industry. I'm Hannah Rosenberger with ASI, and I'm here today with Torsten Gross. Torsten is a marketing executive, competitive race car driver, rescue scuba diver, marathoner, and a whole host of other things who just also happens to be AAC6 quadriplegic. He'll be the keynote speaker at ASI Fort Worth at the end of March. Torsten, thanks so much for being here and talking with me today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So I wanted to just start by asking, on your website, it says that you've said before, almost dying at age 15 was one of the most pivotal and possibly best days of your life, which I feel like is a fairly unconventional thing to say. So why is that how you look at things?
Objectively speaking, in the past, I wasn't the best kid. I didn't try at anything. I had an accident at 15, so we could chalk that up to just being a child or whatever. But I was on the spectrum of 1 to 100. I was in the 90% bad, and I didn't care about anything. And when I had my accident, it didn't shape me up overnight. I'll certainly say that. I certainly harbored a lot of having the accident plus being 15 years old did not make me easy to be around or with. But in hindsight, it changed the trajectory of my life for the better. And I do really well when people doubt me. If you say no to me, I'll find a way to do it and then do it better than you. And I don't mean that in an obnoxious way. I mean that more than just that. That's just the way I work. Some people are self-motivated and they're really great at that. And I am so envious of that, Hannah. But for me, like if I'm running laps, like for race car driving, and I'm trying to do qualifying, I'll get a good time. If you put a car in front of me or behind me during a race situation, I will smoke that time because there's somebody else out there that is giving me the contrarian, right? Like I'm going to beat you. So in hindsight, while I don't think a week after or a month after, even a year after, I would say that this was a great thing for me. I've now been 30 years post-injury. I'd say a couple of years in is when I realized that it's actually kind of a key for me, like a good thing for me.
So you think it's a competitive spirit that it sparked, or is it more stubbornness than anything?
Have you been talking to my wife and my parents and my friends and my I think they would say that there's stubbornness. Look, the joke I always make is like Christopher Reeve, when he was alive, he was a C1 quadriplegic, right? So they want to be me. I want to be a paraplegic. Paraplegics want to walk. Walking people want to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Arnold Schwarzenegger wants to be God, right? Like there's always somebody above you that is better than you that you want to best. And for me, being a quadriplegic, there was always this, well, you're not going to live alone. You're not going to be independent. You're not going to do this. Well, who will? Well, that paraplegic right there, he will be independent, or she. They will be able to live alone. They will be able to do this. I'm like, all right, how fast can they put on their pants? I'm going to put on my pants faster than them. How fast can they do this? Well, I'm going to do it faster than them. And it gave me something to understand where I was in life and then to triumph over that, if that makes sense.
No, totally. And so, you gave the example of racing when talking about that. When was the first time that you got in a race car?
So I think it was 2011. So not that long ago. My wife, I've been pulled over. If you want to guess, I guarantee you it's not going to be high enough for the amount of times I've been pulled over. We'll just leave it at that. I've been told not to tell the number. That's how bad it is. And my wife said, you definitely have a penchant for driving fast. We now moved up to Lime Rock, or Sharon, Connecticut, which is right next to Lime Rock racetrack, which is one of the country's most strategic racetracks. I knew nothing about cars, knew nothing about driving faster than on the street and like racing. And so she got me a track day. And from then on, the addiction was born.
Why? What do you think was so addicting about it for you?
On my first day, my brakes failed. And because we did too many laps without a cool down, uh, there was not a great moment. And the instructor and I went back into the paddock, and I'm fairly certain that he thought that I would say, we're done. And I took off my helmet. I said, I need to buy a race car. And he was like, didn't see that coming. The reason why is no one out there knew that I was in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
I was equal to everybody. I've not done, and you've alluded to some of the things in your intro, I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of things that I think are pretty nifty, and I guess other people do too. None of them made me equal. You and I will never ski in the same division. You and I will never play basketball in the same division. You and I will never do anything in the same division. But performance driving, track driving, race car driving, car doesn't care that I'm in a chair. You don't know that I'm in a chair unless you saw me, in the paddock. The fundamental change that does in your life is indescribable. And I needed to feel that again. I needed to do that again. So it's not necessarily the fast driving. Yeah, fast is fine, sure, but you kind of that evens out, right? Like the difference between 80 and 160 is just what it says on the speedometer. You can't really actually feel it that different. But how people accept you into a community, how you relate to them, how you work with them, that is a big change. And that's why I needed to do it.
Is that part of the reason why as well you started Just Hands after you'd been racing for a little bit?
Yes, it is. To me, a passion isn't something that you just want to do yourself, but you're obliged to share it with others. And I remember it was only 6 months after I'd started tracking that I came home to my wife and I said, we got to buy another race car. And she said, over my dead body. And I go, no, this one's not for us. This one's for other people to use. And she just gave me this look like, that's not a better response, right? Like, that they're expensive. And I was like, well, how do I get around that? Let's start a charity. And that people have helped me in my past so much, Hannah, with sailing and racing and basically any sport that I've done. I never saw that inside the motorsports world. And so I need to share that with others. And that's why I started Just Hands with a friend of mine.
What's it been like since you started? What's the best interaction you've had with someone?
That's a very good question. So I'm not a dad, at least not that I know of. So I inappropriate with what you see is what you get. But I'm not a dad. And a woman came up to me, her husband was on the track, and she was with her young daughter, and then maybe like 6 or 8-year-old son. And she said, fathers are heroes to their sons. They're indestructible. When my husband landed in a wheelchair, it was obvious that my son lost a hero. Now, my son is running around here all day saying, I want to be like daddy. I want to be a race car driver. And she looked me dead in the eye and she said, you brought back hero to my husband. And I was like, well, I'm not crying. You're crying. Like I just, the tears in her eyes, the emotion that she felt, I never, Hannah, would have expected that type of response. And I've got other stories like that too, like that type of response for driving fast on a track. It's incredible. So,
yeah, that's the emotional connection isn't necessarily something I would expect from a sport that's just known for speed, I guess.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I think most people do associate it with, kind of the thrill seekers, adrenaline junkies, all that sort of thing. So I have to ask, as someone who's into speed and this whole variety of thrill seeking things, what's the scariest thing you've ever done?
It's so funny. Everybody gives me kudos when they read my bio for doing what I've done. What we don't ever really talk about is that everything scares me. I'm not kidding at all. Everything scares me that's new. I wish I could actually demonstrate or communicate how scared I get before things. I do something stupid though. If I get something in my mind, I go tell everybody that I'm going to do it. And at that point, there's no turning back. Right now, I've just got to do it. And I'm like, well, if this doesn't work out, at least they can't say that I'm a liar, right? Like, at least I did it. I am scared of everything that I do. You know, just being honest.
No, that it's really a matter of, just learning to cope with it like you have, whether that's telling everybody or whether it's, doing it scared.
Look, to me, lack of confidence and fear go hand in hand. And I feel like confidence only comes on the other side of trying.
Hmm.
There's no way you can be confident. There's no way you can not have fear if you haven't done it before. And that's everything, right? Everything. So how can I believe that I shouldn't be scared? Fear is a wonderful motivator, and not just motivator, but wonderful thing to keep your mind and your body in check. So we often think of fear as a bad thing. I don't.
No, for sure. And kind of going off that, I guess, your racing is obviously not the only thing that you do. You've had a long career in marketing in the advertising world. So what kind of overlap have you noticed in what you needed to be successful in racing and also successful in the business world?
Also a good question. Look, racing's expensive. I can't afford to do it all by myself, right? So my perspective is always over deliver and they will come back. And unfortunately, most agencies, most agencies, at least that I've been at, they don't follow that rule. Holding companies have just destroyed the agency world and the deliverables that they get to give. But I'd say that's a big one. Over deliver, big time. And that then stops you from having to pitch over and over and over again and fight for the same business because you look like you're on somebody's team. The second thing is that no matter what, whether you are a race car driver or an advertising human, you're a brand. And at every level, to every person, right? I tend to be a little polarizing, and I know that about me. But I've always said I don't want to be everything to everybody because then I'm nothing to nobody. And that's the same thing goes for business. I'll take swings, and I'm not afraid of failure. That to me overlaps, right? Because you need to be able to forget what happened on the last lap or the last race or last year. You need to forget it because it's not going to happen again. Everything changes on the next lap. The same thing goes in the marketing world and in my professional career where I failed so many times, Hannah, so many times. But if I dwell on those things, that's not good for anybody, including myself.
Yeah. Deal with the mistake, move on,
Yeah.
and move forward.
And I would even say it's not even a mistake if you learn from it. Right? Like that's the thing. Learning from it means that it's a positive outcome, even if it means you didn't get the business or if you didn't get the sponsor or whatever. Just learn from it. So fail and fail fast.
Mm-hmm. So I'm talking of learning from things. Your keynote at Fort Worth is set to be about finding your superpower, and you say that that's usually something that's hidden or perceived as something that's a weakness. So what do you consider to be your superpower, and how did you kind of figure that out?
Oh, well, it's really easy. Failure for me, and I fail a lot. And I think and what I've gotten into is I've been fired 4 times. I almost failed out of high school and almost failed out of college. I'm not the collegiate mindset, or I don't have the collegiate mindset. That takes a shape of failure inside of our society, which is always a negative, always. Life's been good. I've done well. In hindsight, it's actually a good thing that I did, that I failed. Why did I get fired 4 times? Because I was pushing the envelope each time. I probably had a little bit of hubris in me and pushed a little bit too hard, right? I get that, but it was always because I was trying something that was a little different and a little out of the norm, if you will. That comes off as a major weakness. My success career-wise is 100% based on that, because I failed so much that I found the things that I was good at, right? So that'd be number one. The other thing is my chair, and we talked a lot about how that motivates me. I'm not going to get into it on this podcast, but part of what I talk about is everybody's got a wheelchair, and I'm going to leave it at that for now, because, well, then I don't have to come talk for a lot of what I'm going to say on stage. But it sounds weird, but I believe everybody's got a wheelchair, and there's a reason for that. And so I'll stick with my biggest weaknesses, and therefore strength is my ability to fail and be too stupid to understand that I should stop doing it.
Awesome. Well, Torsten, thanks so much for chatting with me today. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Listeners, you can hear more from Torsten at ASI Fort Worth from March 29th to 31st in Fort Worth, Texas. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for listening.
Bye, guys.